Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called Discover the Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women. 3 keys to heal your body, nourish your spirit, and empower you daily. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I'm really thrilled to be here, partially because I'm a man learning about women's practices, but I think even more importantly, I'm just excited to be bringing forward deeper Qigong insights. So the Qigong has really had a remarkable surge recently of interest in scientific arenas for its power in helping to heal your body, center yourself. It's like a next generation of meditation, which is really borne out by its thousands of years of history coming out of China. So there's a lot of interest in Qigong now, and our featured faculty today is really going to help illuminate specific Qigong practices that can help women thrive, which has been an area of expertise for her, both for a longtime teacher and also in our recent Qigong Summit. So Daisy she's had 20 years of teaching experience. She's a past board member of the International Qigong Association in Beijing, and she lectures and conducts trainings with instructors internationally, and as I mentioned, specializes in women's health. So thank you so much, Daisy, for joining us here today.
Hi, Stephen. It's my pleasure to be here.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there's so much that can be shared about women's Qigong, and the Radiant Lotus Qigong practice came about as a result of my students when I used to live on the Hawaiian Islands on Kauai. And after class, after all the teaching was done, my students would ask me questions privately when my partner wasn't there, because they had very personal questions about their health that they felt that a man wouldn't understand. And so the program that I created started initially because of that, and because my teachers from both Beijing and different parts of China and Tibet were sharing wisdom, really, their ancient systems that culminated in the Radiant Lotus program that got put together. So it's actually 3 branches of information from China, Tibet, and the West, because I also use some Western concepts to help myself as a Westerner as well as an Easterner to understand how we can find balance and harmony through this practice.
Well, thank you for the decades of study that have allowed you to integrate these 3 streams into something really valuable for folks today, and particularly women. So I want to let everyone know we're going to have this hour with Daisy, and we have a chance to go much deeper into a full virtual program building upon the teachings today, and we'll share a little bit about that towards the end of the hour. It's called the Radiant Lotus Qigong Path for Women. So Daisy, it's always great in the start of these calls to have a little bit of more of your backstory, sort of to give, why you've dedicated your life to bringing forward these teachings and these practices. So just a little bit about, what put you on this path and why you found it so valuable.
Well, initially, what brought me to the Qigong path was illness in my family. Both my father passed of lung cancer, my mother of a different cancer, but colon cancer, and my first husband had actually passed of leukemia. So with all those people that I love so much coming through illness, I thought, I really need to find a way that can support their health and healing. And I remember kind of desperately searching for different ways, because much as I appreciate the Western medical establishment, I think that the answers aren't all there. I'm sure you know and feel that, and the audience knows and feels that quite often too when you get into a desperate situation. Western medicine is definitely a great help when it comes to acute situations, and you're in an emergency and maybe an accident has happened, and there's profuse, messy liquids, fluids, an accident, on the road. That can be a very different thing than a chronic situation. And with chronic ailments, Qigong is amazing. I would say that would be the first thing that I would do, the first learning that I would do if I had known way back then when my family were, some of my beloved family members were alive then, that I would have tried that first. at least in tandem, even if they were on chemo, that it would be in tandem with these kind of techniques from the East. So that was initially how I got started. And the more I learned about these energy practices and how important breath and synchronizing the breath with movement and mindful intention was, the more I realized that this is something so pivotal, yet so simple, that there's got to be, this has to be out there. And so I slowly started teaching and learning a lot, and then teaching after my different family members fell ill and then eventually passed. And I thought, I would dedicate my life to sharing this with the world. The women's practice especially, because in Tibet they say that women are half the sky. And so I like that idea that because we are at least half the world, if you empower half the world, what would happen to the other half? Probably everyone would be empowered, and there'd be a great deal more dialoguing, communication, and radiant health for everyone. But it's often women that carry the energy, really, for the family. I know that happens with men and women as parents, but because babies are born from women's bodies, of course, men have a great deal to do with that. But because women carry that instinct for carrying life, this is one of the reasons I feel that to have women more empowered, skillful in their use of power, and also, increasing their health and immunity. When you have that as the baseline, everything changes in the family. And so that's why the Radiant Lotus Qigong path started, with that intention originally.
So one of the things that you're kind of pointing to, I think, is important, is that because of the biological predisposition to carrying and nurturing a child, there's certain energetic patterns that women might be more likely to create with their bodies and systems, and therefore kind of feed the downstream issues or diseases from that. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how that might show up in the energy system, some of the patterns that are more typical of women.
Yeah, and that's true. Whether a woman gets pregnant or not is not the main concern. As soon as young girls, as soon as girls become women, when they start having their menstrual cycle, that changes because their hormonal system affects so much in their lives. Whether it's that monthly flow or lower back pains and discomfort. I have to say that the first time I realized I was going to have this every month, I thought, oh my gosh, I'd rather be a guy. I didn't know that was going to happen every month. Even my mom at that time, she didn't educate us about our own systems. And what little I learned in school, it really wasn't enough. And so this program, the Radiant Lotus program, teaches women what happens when the hormonal system starts fluxing and changing, and how does it affect the emotions, and how can you better manage the ups and downs that the body, the mind, the emotions go through, so that your health is improved and you don't, you could say, spark everywhere when you're not in a good place because the hormones are out of balance. So there's the mere fact of having a menstrual cycle for so many years of our life, and then in my middle years, our middle years, if you're relating to me on that level, when menopause changes and we don't have that cycle anymore, then how does that affect things like bone density or estrogen levels and hormone levels in that respect? So many of my students have experienced hot flashes, and after teaching them a few of the techniques, it really, I would say, quite considerably changed their lives. And one of the movements I'm going to teach today actually will be a movement that helps with hot flashes and also helps relieve pressure. And if you're managing the energy of little kids around you or young ones that are very hyper, then you can teach the kids the same movement. It's actually good for everyone. So I'll go into that more a little bit later. But for women that are pregnant or thinking of conceiving or in that whole process of pregnancy, the hormones go through so much vast change. And really, if you have an understanding of that and can, even as simple as something as breathing better through that process and relieving some of the stress of the unknown, because essentially when you're bringing a life into the world, you might have instincts that will come into play, but even with those instincts, the fear of the unknown will probably be in the body as much as there is excitement. And so you have all these ripples and ups and downs, hopefully more ups than downs, that are coming into one's life and affecting not only yourself, but your partner and your family members. So that's why managing, I don't say to control, but to manage one's emotions and rebalance those emotions can actually help the physical body. And then the hormones will equalize and harmonize after that. So it's one plays into the other. If you have children, and your partner will probably share some of what she's experienced with that, I'm sure, if you haven't already gone through that, Stephen.
Yeah.
But
we're in the midst of actually a young girl at home, a young daughter at home, and so definitely see that it's like there's a special kind of demand that comes with motherhood, and as you said, the hormonal shifts that are required and all of that. Also, we talked in the description for today about the challenge women often face of being prone to overdoing and caretaking, and that kind of depleting the chi as well. It's something we talked a lot about with some extras before we embarked on the journey of parenthood. But you want to share anything about that?
Yes, definitely. There's a tendency that women have, maybe because they're natural communicators, but community builders. And as community builders, there's a tendency to juggle. And so they'll have multiple commitments to family, to work, to taking care of the tribe. And if you even look at women's bodies, by our very physical nature, we surround life. And as a result of that, there's a tendency to overcare, overdo for others to make sure that the tribe is settled. I say tribe when I mean family, but these days there's that term tribe, which I can relate to. And our tribe these days is not just family, but it's extended family. It's our colleagues, it's our friends, it's the whole community around that one person. And so a woman's influence is really incredibly vast in that sense. And so how do you stop yourself from doing that? I don't know what men do. I think they have maybe a tendency to try to fix things, to operate from a thing of let's solve the problem and have a solution. But women will listen often more. They'll find ways to arbitrate between family members because traditionally they've been the ones at home, taking care of the children or other responsibilities of the home. And so that's the tendency for women to overdo rather than be present. And my belief is that if your child or your family member, your loved one, sees you in balance, you become a stable lead energy for the family. And it's a term I use often with the women and men as well that I teach. And so how do you become a stable lead energy? If you look at the examples in our lives, in the male domain, I would think of someone like the Dalai Lama. He's an incredibly stable lead energy. He's not loud or obnoxious. He maintains his composure and shares from his heart and from his wisdom about the way of the world, the way that he sees the world. He doesn't push, he doesn't pull, he stays in what I call vertical alignment. And vertical alignment is how I remind people is that if you are connecting deeply with the earth through all the points of your feet when they're flat on the floor with the earth, and you see this image of light rising through the body and connecting to a star in the sky. And then you see that light come around the body and back into the earth. It's an image, but when you understand how powerful images are, especially mental images that you repeat in your mind, then that kind of imagery can actually empower every person that's on this earth. Because when you understand how vertical alignment works, your opportunity is to find that balance in the center. You are, as a human being, whether you're a man or a woman, between the sky and the earth. And so groundedness needs to happen, because when one is grounded, we can relate better to each other. Your tendency to be too far out in the stratosphere, and that happens also with very spiritual people. That's why I use the Dalai Lama as an example, because he's grounded enough that he can relate to everyone, despite how high-minded he is and how spiritual he is. And so there's an example like that. In women, Maya Angelou, people who are real and community-oriented, you feel a kind of settling with them. You feel grounded and warm and safe with people who have your interest and the interest of the community in line with our general purpose. And so lead energy is not just about leaders, it's about how you hold presence in your own family, in the sphere of influence that you have. So I'm not sure if I have made myself clear.
So no, that was a great explanation, Daisy, and really makes it clear why the centering exercises, the balancing, and also it sounds like working with the breath and movement can really help your whole system come into the hormonal, energetic, and emotional coherence that allows you to be a lead energy that really has a positive blessing effect on others. Well, I think that's a great philosophical foundation. So maybe now it's time to go into some of the specific practices that do work so well for women. So you want to set that up a little bit and then give us a demonstration?
Yeah, sure. There is a movement that I'll share with the audience called showering Qi. It's quite a classic movement. It's been used by both men and women at the Shaolin Temple in China. A dear friend of mine who was a cage fighter used this movement to help de-escalate stress that had come up because it was a big fight and he was going in front of over 5,000 people. And so he used it, and it definitely relaxed him, probably relaxed him too much for a cage fight. But I will share that movement with you so that you can have an idea of how you can help yourself immediately. One warning is that it lowers blood pressure. So if you're going to do this movement with me, then definitely, if you have a tendency to low blood pressure, I would do it seated. Okay, but everyone else can do it standing with me as you wish. So I'm just going to go behind, and I will share that movement called showering Qi. Okay. So we begin with our hands, facing each other, and the palms are facing each other, and the elbows are rounded, shoulders are down, and the feet deeply connected to the earth. And so we sink a little in the knees and then open the arms to the sides as we inhale up as if we're magnetizing the energy of the earth up. At the shoulder height, we turn and exhale. You can sink a little in the knees. Then inhale up, bringing the hands over the head. Feels like I have heads right now. Exhale down through the center line. And just feel the hands scanning through the outside field of the body, what we call in China the Wei Qi field. And again, so it's inhale and rising the energy up. Turn at the shoulder height to exhale. Inhale up. Palms form over the head and exhale down. Long, slow exhale as the hands scan through the Wei Qi field or the auric field of the body. I'll do it one more time just for practice. So open the ball of light in your mind's eye. Rise the energy up from the earth. We think of the earth as having nurturing energy and the sky having active energy, as if clouds, so powerful that it moves the clouds in the sky. And so you have heaven and earth together, and you just sift through the energy field of the body. At the end, you can crisscross one palm over the other, it doesn't matter which. Just bring it back into the lower belly, and you relax. So that, I'm just going to come back. That is what we call the showering qi movement. I think you can understand just by how the pacing is, how it slows the breath down and brings relaxation into the body. So whenever you move the hands through the midline of the body, and especially from upper down to lower, you're going to draw energy downwards. So if there's a lot of mental activity, a lot of stress, that goes up to the head. And if you're infused, for example, with anger because of a situation that you're trying to manage, then the liver will get fired up and it'll press the energy up towards the head. So that causes high blood pressure and amongst other things. And so what you want to do is do such a movement that would actually help to just draw balanced energy through the body. We call it showering qi because we're showering off the day's stresses, or if a circumstance has happened that is less than what you would like and everything is moving upwards, you need to balance it by calmly bringing the energy downwards through the center line of the body. So there's movements like that I'll be teaching. As I said, that's a very classic movement. It can be done in one of two ways. And so maybe what I'll do, I just taught you the most basic way, which is to release energy, have it wash down through the body, out through your feet, into the earth, not to pollute the earth. And so how you think about it will make a difference. What we do in Qigong is we understand the greater forces are the earth and the sky. And so through the cool layers of the earth and even deeper in, you'll have the molten lava layers. And those who have lived on the big island of Hawaii will know what that's all about, especially it's still active, that volcano. So in our visualization process, we are seeing the earth absorb the stagnant energy that we haven't been able to handle on our own. And since it is, thankfully, such a forgiving earth, it will take some of that stagnation, all of it if you allow it, and it will just take it and recycle it, compost it, and allow it to sift up through the layers of the earth again to reinvigorate all of life, essentially. So that's one way that I've showed you how to do it. And actually what's happening is you're moving the legs up at the same time as the body in that one. So when the arms go up, the legs come up. when the hands lower, the legs will also lower. And so that's showering Qi 1. There's a second movement. I call it the lotus rises through the mud. And it's the same showering Qi movement almost. And so I say almost because the difference is when the arms are going up, the legs are going down. And so you actually have this kind of balancing effect with the hands, arms, and the legs. So for those that have low blood pressure, the second movement will help, and it will be a little more balancing. But the first one is usually used for hot flashes because it's also bringing the heat down. Okay, so even though we're connecting with the heat of the earth, the other part of this is that the same showering movement becomes a balancing movement if you understand how the legs move in opposition to the arms. So why don't I show you that so you can get a feel for it and you can try it at home. Okay. Okay, so same movement. My hands are facing each other like so. And so the fingers are relaxed. The arms are extended a little further out so it's not too close to the body. So here, shoulders dropped, elbows rounded. And so here we go. This time, my legs will go down and my arms will come up. So I'll show you first what it looks like. Inhale, rise the arms up and the body sinks. Turn, exhale, and rise as if you're rising through the earth. Now, connecting to all the sources of light above, we sink the legs and the hands come over the head. Then exhale slowly down as the body gently rises up. Okay, and release. And I'll do a couple of times so you get a sense of this. So inhale and rise. Sink the body, rise the arms. Turn, exhale, rising through the earth. Inhale, the light of the stars, the sun, the moon. Palms facing. Exhale, slowly rise up through the legs again. Exhaling all the way down in a long, slow exhale. I'll do it again. Open the arms and hands, inhaling. Bottom sinks, legs bend. Exhale, turn. Inhale, sink the legs, rise the arms. And exhale down. Crisscross the hands again. Come back into the lower abdomen, what we call the lower dantian, which is an energy center in the center of the body. Women, I'll come back. Women's strength is known to be in the middle dantian, which is in the center of the chest. So that's a distinction between, I guess you could say, co-ed Qigong and women's Qigong, because women are actually more heart-centered, and it's the heart that actually provides sustenance for oneself and also a community. And so when we're able to sustain our own energy and put the oxygen mask on ourselves first, as they recommend on the airplanes, then we have enough energy left to support our family members and our loved ones. So that's the two ways of doing showering Qi, Stephen. And I hope
Beautiful.
the audience will have a chance to play with that.
Yeah, well, thank you for those demonstrations. And that was interesting recognition for me that the dantian tends to be more centered in the heart for women versus which you usually think of it more close to the belly center. Yeah, anything else that in terms of that you want to share just around also what are you visualizing? What are you doing with your breath while you're doing those practices?
Well, breath is of course key. the most healing breath in terms of our society right now. And I say this for both East and West. Everything is changing very rapidly in our societies. But the breath I always recommend to my students, especially in this style, is there should be 4 qualities of breath. And that is slow, deep, smooth, and long. And so why are these 4 qualities important? Because when you're under stress, your whole breathing changes. You tend to either seize up and not breathe, or the breath gets short and fast and hard, which is sort of like what society is these days. Sorry about that. I wish I could change that for everyone, but since we can't change others, what we do have to consider is that there's this huge opportunity to change ourselves. And what I have found that when you are able to change your breathing rhythm, that affects everything else that you do. It ripples out from the breath. And so anytime that you're under stress, slow down the breath. Not only slow down, but deepen it. And so if you were to place your hands in that folded position that I taught you and placed it over the belly, you would be able to feel, ideally, you would be able to feel your breath all the way down to the lower parts of your body. And so when we exhale, we press all the air out of the lungs. And so I'll share this in the actual sessions a little more clearly, because we're just in a little studio here. But if you were to be able to do that, where all the air goes out and the tip of the tongue touches the upper front palate. So the exhale would look like this. I hope I can convey this over the camera to the audience, but it would be and all the air presses out. And then when you inhale the stomach kind of grows, and then the rest of the lungs fill to the top of the lungs. So to deepen the breath, to lengthen the breath, and to broaden and lengthen the breath at the same time, to slow it down and to smoothen it out, because when a breath is ragged, that's when people are under stress. Or they're breathing hard because they're either in a panic and they're trying to run from something, or they're trying to confront something and it's just overwhelming them. So for women, because they're juggling multiple responsibilities, usually at home or at work, learning to breathe this way is the ideal for optimum healing. The same type of breath is used in hospitals when I teach in different hospitals, like Johns Hopkins or Mount Sinai, a women's college. Anytime I work with patients or even staff there, because they're in a similar panic, and that's because the lead energy is the illness, or the lead energy is the bad news. And so how do we kind of do a retake of that and bring yourself back to center so that it doesn't dominate your whole being with helplessness or hopelessness? So the first opportunity is to slow down the breathing, release, the tension through the breath, and then engage the body afterwards. So I share this with you, and I'll share a story that I think is illustrative, because my teacher, Master Wan Su Jian in Beijing, he was caught in an earthquake in his early, young part of his life when he was working with the Beijing Red Cross. And what happened in his situation was that he and his colleagues had gone underground to get medical supplies for the earthquake victims. And they themselves ended up becoming victims, because there was another quake unexpectedly. The whole earth shook, the roof caved in, and the 3 of them were trapped underground for 3 days. So during that time, they couldn't really move. They had nowhere to go. They couldn't run. And I'm sure, without a doubt, that panic was setting in. because they didn't know if they would actually survive another quake or what would happen. And so in his situation, he said that all he focused on was slowing the breath down, trying to bring peaceful, if that's possible, or at least good memories back of his own life. Because if he was going to die anyway, then he wanted to die with, good thoughts in his body, in his mind. And so he sat, essentially he sat in meditation, tried to get his other two colleagues to do the same. And unfortunately, when they, he heard noise 3 days later, and he called, he yelled back, and they uncovered them, but the other two of his colleagues had passed on. Now, what I think is important in that story is that his colleagues passed on not because they had a beam or anything fall on them. They weren't hurt, but they died. You could say that they died of fear. It just ate up their jing, their life force, their chi in their body, and the fear took over and set into the joints, set into the body, robbed the kidneys and adrenals of energy, and he just couldn't get them to come back to center. So I always remember that story of my teacher, because I think, how many times have we, especially in the West, as I said, it's not just the West anymore, but how many times have we been pulled off center, lost our breath, lost our connection to being present? We're safe as long as we have breath, and as long as we learn to cultivate the breath and peace and calmness in our bodies. So whenever we can return to that breath, to slow it down and to train ourselves to train our breath, then the opportunity for harmonization and recalibration of all the hormones, the circulatory system, all the systems of the body come back into balance. So this is why breath is that key. Yeah. So, we can't, if you couldn't breathe for 5 minutes, you'd be in big trouble, right? But you can do without food, you can do it without water, but you certainly can't do without your breath.
Well, it's a beautiful multi-leveled explanation of the power of breath and how it's working with energy and hormones at the same time. And so, and also just retraining our nervous system to set the sort of not be in fight or flight and in that fear-based mode, but to really have the energy and access different qualities of energy that we can circulate for health. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about, so there's a kind of a general set of practices that are good for every woman, and then there might be specific things that you would do if you have a specific challenge. As you're starting to allude there to, like, there's kidney energy and liver energy. There's different kinds of sources of energy in the body that can get depleted that are upstream from illnesses. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you can approach Qigong in a more therapeutic way.
Well, there's as you mentioned, there's the kind of general exercises that are good for women, but in that instance with the showering movement, it's good for men and children as well. When it comes to women's health, the opportunity is to get things back into balance through the hormonal system. And there's movements that are very, very empowering because they remind us of our natural grace, but they also open up the joints and upper body where a lot of stagnation might be hiding for women, because the tendency is that in order for the body to protect itself, the kind of stagnant cells or broken cells or damaged cells will shuttle to the fatty tissues of the body in order to protect the organs. And that's important to know. It doesn't mean that the more fat you have, the more protected you are. What it is that, excuse me, if you the body has its own intelligence and mechanism to bring balance into place. And so if your organs are healthy and functioning in a really vibrant way, and it's cleared of toxins, it's cleared of stagnations that can actually cause either pain, inflammation, or when it gets into a very condensed state, it becomes something like a tumor or a cyst in women. So how do we break that down? And that's what this work will do. We do it through a number of ways. We do it through actual movements that open up the energy channels or the meridians of the body. So those stretching movements that are part of Lotus, Radiant Lotus Qigong, are very effective for that. But one of the other ways that I find extremely powerful for women is the Tibetan sound healing. And that's because we use tones. We use these tones to actually break up blocked or stagnant energy that's in the upper body, the lower body. So in this program, I'll end up teaching at least 2 of the 6 sounds that exist. And then there are other sounds that break up, 2 other sounds that break up energy in the breast tissue. And that's because, again, women have a tendency to kind of collect blocked or stagnant energy around the breast tissue. And because of deodorants or more especially antiperspirants that have aluminum in them, they actually block the lymph glands in the arms, in the underarms. And so you have the detoxing of the body not happening properly. And so the tones that we have in the Tibetan system, they actually break down these old signals or persistent patterns, you could say, that have been embedded in the body through patterns or habits that may not have been helpful to each of us. And so how sound vibration works is that first, you might have a blockage, and let's say it's like a cyst at this point, and the sound wave travels in, and if it's a very dense blockage, it'll bounce back. So then you might have a little bit of detox response or Herxheimer. But, we advise to drink a little more water and take an Epsom salt bath to help with relieving some of that stagnation. But if you are very persistent in doing the healing sounds, what happens is the energy goes in, the sound wave goes in, and after a while, the blockage will open up, and it just starts to travel through and disperse the energy that has been blocked in the woman's body. So that's how, one of the key elements that also helps with women's Qigong, and in this practice, the Radiant Lotus Women's Qigong. I really feel what that has done also, what I've seen in my students and in my instructors in different parts of the world, is how often women don't access or don't speak their, using their authentic voice. Maybe they've been put down, or maybe the family culture or the societal culture has kept women restrained or oppressed in some way, repressed. And so when we're not accessing our authentic voice, I think that one of the things that happens is that information has to go somewhere. So it will very probably go into the different tissues of the body. And wherever we're most vulnerable is where that information will start to pattern itself. And so that's why sound vibration can actually break through these kind of damaged or coagulating kind of cells. And we've had some really profound results with this practice because of that. Not only freeing up women's bodies in terms of where the sound is directed to in the body, but also freeing up their ability to speak their truth. And, I think that's such a really vital, important thing that happens in our society. We certainly see a lot of that not happening because of fear, of repercussions of not speaking, of speaking. But I feel like we need to still say what needs to be said. And you choose your time and placement of that, but ultimately we need to speak the truth. And if we can do it gently and gracefully, and yet with courage, I think that woman by woman, this world can change for the better. And if we have men that support that shift, and probably you know more than ever since you are the head of the Shift Network, that shifting is important. Shift means movement, giving voice and creating sound, our own sounds from our own voice creates movement. And so, when you marry physical movement with this sound waves and this type of movement of accessing this center of the body, which is not often talked about in co-ed Qigong, yet this is such an important dantian that's never acknowledged. It's vital that we start to use our voices in a skillful and calm way. Sometimes can't always be calm, can we?
Well, that was a beautiful.
Those
beautiful
are my thoughts.
And I like what you were sharing about shift, really, that movement is at the core of shift, and that's part of what stagnation or things getting stuck or blocked or suppressed in our bodies is what eventually festers into disease. And so if we can subtly, gently use movement and breath and sound to begin to move that energy again, that opens up our system and prevents the downstream disease. So that's a really great set of insights that you just offered. One other area that we said we would share a little bit about in today's program is about neutral compassion. It's very clear just how you show up, this kind of spacious, calm presence that you have, and that's obviously sourced in a very deep grounding of your energy system. So just share a little bit about how Qigong can help cultivate this sense of neutral compassion and how we engage life.
Well, the term neutral compassion, it came really, it was inspired by how I saw that women had a tendency to overgive. I myself suffered from that at times. And because when we love very deeply, I think. It's just the nature of our bodies, how we're made. So what is neutral compassion? It's not being so neutral that you don't feel. You can feel compassion and should. This is what connects all of humanity together. But neutral compassion, in a sense, keeps you in vertical alignment. And so when you're pulled off center, one way or the other way, it's like I don't know if you played with these toys when you were young, but Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. And so we are like that. We can be pulled off center, and then we go into what I call horizontal alignment. You're either flat on your back or on your face. But when you're in neutral compassion, where you're not trying to overdo for that beloved family member, then you stay in this neutral place where you see from a very different perspective, a bird's eye perspective, or you could see with the eyes of God or the eyes of the beloved, however you want to, language it. But you see from a higher place. And so often what happens is that women who are trying to help their family members or their friends, because they might be so capable, they will take over all the responsibility and overdo. And they get tapped out, and then they can't return to center. They can't find their own balance. So overdoing actually doesn't help. It doesn't help you, and actually doesn't empower your loved one. Of course, that's different if someone is seriously needing support or asking for support, then to the best of your ability without tapping yourself out completely. Because we're caregivers. It's our nature, I would say, to care for our families, care for our friends, in order to build that community. The problem really is when we overdo it and we lose our alignment. And instead of being kindly compassionate, neutrally compassionate, we spill out with our sympathy. So there's a difference between sympathy and empathy in my mind. Empathy is needed in order for all of us to be able to relate to each other. So to understand what it is to walk in another's shoes, that is a beautiful quality. Sympathy at the right time is also a beautiful quality, but if you're constantly sympathetic, and often what happens, especially with healers or those who are ultra sensitive, is that they take on the symptoms of the person that they're trying to help. Children often do that. So because they're ultra sensitive to begin with at early stages in their life, they sometimes will adopt the trauma or drama of their parent in order to alleviate their suffering. And so as a woman, as a mother, for example, you wouldn't want your child to do that. You don't want them to suffer. And so how do you support your own alignment within your family and amongst your loved ones, and find that way of being, essentially, so that you don't overdo and hurt yourself and, in fact, disempower the people that you love. So I sometimes, actually, every class that I do with women, I ask them, I do an energy test with them, and I show them that if they, quote, feel sorry for someone, in that feeling sorry for them, they actually disempower the person that they love. And there's something about feeling sorry for someone. Although you might feel empathetic and even sympathetic, it's not that you feel that that's the problem. The problem is if you actually chronically stay there and dwell. So that's the word. If you dwell on that state of over-compassion, you actually disempower yourself and the person that you love. Because essentially you're seeing them as weak and incapable, and they can't find their way out of this mess, whatever it is. Or if it's a disease, they can't find the healing that will happen as a result of this awakening experience of lack of ease, right? So I would say that in this teaching, we look at compassion very differently. We don't feel sorry for anyone. We actually bring them tools. And my belief has always been, how do we empower a society? We don't bring them a fish dinner. We teach them how to fish. Right? So it's the tools that are necessary to evolve our society. I'm certainly not doing it, alone. There's so many people doing it in their own different ways. But, the Radiant Lotus practice has engaged enough women and they've seen enough results with it that they wanted to teach it. So that's why I started instructor certifications in different parts of the world. And now, there's 13 countries that teach Radiant Lotus Qigong with some certified instructors. I've been blessed.
Well, thank you for that beautiful explanation of the difference between sympathy and empathy, and really being able to engage from that kind of neutral compassion. This is a great time to talk more explicitly about your upcoming program. And first of all, we want to say we're really delighted that you've chosen to partner with us on this. The program that Daisy will be teaching is called Radiant Lotus Qigong Path for Women, Living Practices for Your Healing, Balance, and Empowerment. You can find it described in detail, and also registration is at qigongforwomen.net. That's Qigong for F-O-R women.net, Qigong4women.net. This is going to be a 7-week program, and this is a very experiential program. This is not about theory. It's really about practice and cultivating a set of practices that helps you restore your energy, rebalance, open things up, use sound, movement, presence, visualization to really get your system flowing in a harmonic way that also prevents downstream disease and can rejuvenate you if you are facing with particular medical challenges. As well as just create a foundation of wellness and centeredness for your life. So this is designed for women. There because of the virtual context, there may be some males who take it as well. It's okay, but it's specifically tailored to the hormonal and energetic and bodily orientation that helps more for women. And it's really for all ages. You can be on the younger side of our programs and be building your good practices for the long haul, or if you're kind of on the older side, maybe doing more restoration work. But it really is, it's about a lifelong set of practices, and very much as Daisy said, it's teaching you to fish, not just giving you a fish. So Daisy, you want to share in your own words what people are going to receive in the Radiant Lotus program for women, or Qigong for Women program with you?
Sure, Stephen. It's 7 modules, and I'll slowly build, the program from week to week. And so we start with the basics of the women's Qigong, and that's why the first episode I actually teach about further, really more deeply about neutral compassion and vertical alignment, and being a stable lead energy in your own home. First for yourself, and then it ripples out into the field. So I will probably have someone helping me with that, because I want to show you through an energy test how that works and how it can actually empower you, and you can do it on your own family when you're at home. Then there will be movements like the balancing movement. We call it the phoenix rises from the ashes. And that's a type of movement that I've actually prescribed to both men and women, because it's that pivotal, that helpful for all of us. But women especially, when they've had something terrible happen in their lives, and they feel like their energy is scattered and going every which way, this movement helps to realign and consolidate their energy so that the left and right hemispheres of the brain are operating in a more synchronized way. And so it's to help them rise through the challenges that have come up in their lives, to kind of declare the limits. And so even physically, it shows the expansion of the body to its limits, the physical limits, but even beyond the physical limits. And you're working the body in tandem with mindful visualization and with a synchronized breath. So there will be several movements that you'll learn that are synchronized with the breath. It's an introductory program, so we'll go really deeply into the concepts as much, and living philosophy as much as we're doing movements. We'll also be doing a couple of the healing sounds so that you can start to at least balance the upper and lower bodies. My hope for the people that attend this program is that they find a little more peace in their day, and they have tools that they can use, sometimes very simple tools that they wouldn't even think make a difference. But once they understand it and practice it with me that day, or hopefully beyond that day for that week, then they'll be able to access that peace that's already there. It's a way of presencing stable information when chaos is all around us. And so in many ways, it's really beyond form. Although the form can be beautiful, which is very appealing because we have this human body. Essentially, the philosophy and the understanding of the living concept of how we can be in our lives probably is even more essential, because I say that because I've had students that were in wheelchairs or bedridden. They were in hospital beds, and so they couldn't really do a lot of movement. But if they understood the concept and, in a sense, had instruction about how to think or assess or be present for what was happening in their lives, there would be no regret and fear would dissipate. So on those levels also, the emotional quality of how we understand life, how we feel life, we can actually equalize things when it's too intense. So it's kind of taking off the edges of the sharpness that our life experiences have given us. And really, again, having the tools to manage it so that you are empowered and, you don't sink back into the mud. You will rise again. So
well, thank you for that
breath.
Thank you for that beautiful overview. And it's really clear you're integrating so many different threads. And I appreciate that it's working on the thought form level and the concepts and the breath and the embodiment and different practices. I encourage people to go to the page at qigongforwomen.net, and you can just give it a read through. There's some really great reflections on womb awareness and how to stop chi leaks. And there's a lot of very interesting subjects that are going to be covered here by Daisy. And I'll share a little bit about on the high level. So as she mentioned, this is going to be 90-minute class sessions with a live component. These are going to be video-based. So we're going to have her pre-record some of the video teachings so that you can see the demonstrations and then be able to engage questions and answers live on different things. You get recordings of every class session as well as audio versions and transcripts so that you can follow along in the future, really reference key ideas, concepts, and practices very easily. We also have a Facebook learning community, allows you to engage people around the world who are taking this program. And we also have a number of great extra bonuses. There's a dialogue with Prune Harris hosted by Dondi Dahlin from our Energy Medicine Summit called Energy Medicine and Womb Wisdom, Healing the Womb to Give Birth to Our Power and Vitality. There's a dialogue with Daisy and Sharon Rose that is from the Qigong Global Summit that's called Radiant Lotus Qigong. And we also have an extra bonus from our recent summit in which you get access to our top 5 Global Summit recordings besides the one that Daisy did from experts like Ming-Tong Gu and Lee Holden and Effie Chow. Really diverse set of practices and teachings around Qigong and how you can apply that in your daily life. So that extra bonus is only available until midnight tonight as a incentive for you to go to the page at qigongforwomen.net, give it a read, tune in, and if you feel called, then you get an extra incentive to sign up by midnight tonight. So the program starts November 8th. It's going to run on Thursdays at 5 Pacific time, 8 Eastern. It's a very reasonable investment, just 3 payments of $109, or you can save about 10% when you pay in full at $297. So I encourage you to go to the page, read through some of the testimonials. Qigong, the real testimony of Qigong is in the results. It's a very results-oriented practice. People feel more centered, more calm, that you're resettling your nervous system, that you're stopping the overgiving patterns, that you're regenerating your qi and healing your body physically, working with your emotions. There's a lot of very powerful, tangible benefits, and you get a flavor for that from reading through the testimonials, which you can do at Qigong, that's Qigong, Qigong for women.net. So I think that covers all the basics. And Daisy, it's really been a delight to be with you here. I want to say you just emanate such a beautiful, loving, centered energy. It just is very calming and soothing to be around. And I know it's a testimony to your practice. So just want to invite you in the last minute or so to anything that you still want to speak directly to the folks who are the women who are considering joining you for this journey into Radiant Lotus Qigong.
Well, my hope is that I'll really be able to engage you in practice and living, enjoying the living process and philosophy of Qigong. I know a lot of people come to different courses that I have live, but to be able to access this every week And that's not something I've done before, to teach every week, and especially online. I think it holds a new way of connecting that I had never considered before. But hopefully you'll be able to get such great benefit from it just from a distance, because we're actually going live. And so I certainly wish everyone the best of health, the most radiant health, and in your relationships and in all that you do, to be in balance, to be that stable lead energy, to remain compassionate and yet not overdo, and to find your alignment wherever you walk. And so I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you on November 8th if you're able to join me. Thanks so much. Thank you, Stephen.
Beautiful. Thank you for that warm invitation. And again, when you've signed up today by midnight at Qigong for Women, forwomen.net, you get the extra top five Qigong Global Summit recordings with Mingtong Gu, Lee Holden, and Effie Chow to complement the rest of your journey here with Radiant Lotus Qigong for Women. So I encourage you to go to the page, tune in. If you're getting a yes, you want to go forward, then to do so today, and you get the extra bonus. So thank you so much, Daisy. You're a pleasure to be with. Great teachings and practices. Onwards, and look forward to seeing many of you in the upcoming program. So thank you so much, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.